said before, DevOps does not invent new wheels. It uses the wheels that are out there, that has been taking IT forward for the past 50 or 60 years. I'm getting old, aren't I? I've been saying 50 or 60 years for a while. It's probably 60 or 70 years now, isn't it? Or maybe even 70 or 80. These things have developed. It's built on proven concepts and frameworks. So things like Agile and Scrum. I couldn't resist putting a little bit of tag in there against Agile. Agile is the formal mechanism. Agile with a capital A is the formal approach with using Scrum and formal issues. Agile, being agile with a small a, is always the more important thing. Being adaptive, not being committed to things, being able to change at short notice. As an organization, having the ability to be able to have someone say, this was a really good idea when we started it, it's not now. So let's stop it, not throw good money after bad. Let's just come back and change things. You don't have to stick to a plan. It's good to have a plan, but you can adapt to it. So agile with a small a, being agile in the way you work, that is important. And I'll touch on agility in a few slides' time as well, and how old an idea it is. Value stream analysis, a very powerful concept. Look at the stages of what you're doing. And lean, as I talked about, critically examine that value stream and pick out the things that are necessary and do those. Pick out the things that are not necessary and stop doing them. And again, I'll emphasize some of these a bit further. ITIL, very biased, been involved in ITIL now since 1989. So wrote big chunks of it, get quite precious about it. So I'm not going to pretend I'm a neutral on there, but it's nice to see how DevOps understands that service management and operations is critical. It didn't start that way. If you go back at the history of DevOps, there was serious talk about something called no-ops. You don't need to worry about operations. You just need to build it right, put it out there, and it'll run. And some people with serious networks and service management knowledge got involved in DevOps and transformed it into a much more sensible, balanced kind of approach. And the last bullet point is that there are a lot more ideas out there. Kanban, I'm sure most of you for sure will be familiar with Kanban boards and things that need to be done, things that we're working on, things that we've completed. The very best tool ever for managing and controlling homework. So if you've got teenage kids, Kanban is absolutely what you should buy them for their birthday. It's the best way for managing homework ever. Very versatile approach. The theory of constraints, what limits us? How do we go more? And you can, do 20 minutes talking about the theory of constraints, but I won't at the moment. But DevOps doesn't rephrase it or paraphrase it or come up with an alternative. It says, understand the theory of constraints. You'll need it. And there are a lot more that we could add in there as well. So as it says in the picture, and that's a slide from the foundation course to show you the kind of things that come up in there. Successful DevOps relies on the adoption and integration of multiple frameworks. So what it does do that is perhaps less common in our history is it brings these different frameworks and it says work together. They complement each other. It's not one or the other. And don't get locked down into believing one of them is the answer to everything. Now, so step back a little bit. But hinging on that last point, talked about Patrick Dubois, and that it's not his pinned tweet anymore. But if I have to define DevOps, that's where I go to now. And I love that definition because it's based on pragmatism and Dubois' work and experience after he got all enthusiastic and idealistic at the beginning, and he's much more pragmatic if you read his tweets these days. DevOps, you throw security in there as well, because DevOps actually is about all the ideas that still exist, is everything you do to overcome the friction created by silos. It's not saying we will demolish silos, they will cease to exist. You'll never entirely get rid of them. What you want to do is reduce as much as possible the damage they cause. And I think that's a wonderfully pragmatic definition of what we're trying to do. We're trying to reduce the damage and make things go smoother. And if you can achieve that by using some DevOps ideas, then you are doing DevOps. So the rest is engineering. So reducing the friction. Ideally, we want to get rid of silos, but there we go. And the reason silos will still exist, even minor ones without much wall between them, even within a DevOps team, is because development and operations are not going away. They are separate things. And we'll always need to do both of them. And the reason there's a picture of John Lennon there is just to show you that this isn't an IT thing. There's an interview that John Lennon gave shortly before he died, and he'd just gone back into pop music, to music making, having taken 2 years out to be what he called a house husband, running the apartment in New York. And the interviewer said, you've done both those things. Now, what's the biggest difference between being a successful musician and being a house husband? And Lennon answered it seriously, which was not usually his character point, but he took it on and he answered it very well, I thought. He said, when you're a musician, you got this idea in your head and you hear this song going round and you build upon it and you refine it and you get some stuff written down and you get some guys together and you book some studio time and you lay down some tracks and then you spend some more time balancing it and you put more vocals on top and you get it all mixed and you think, great, you've been working on this for a day or so, it's right. You listen to it again, you say, great, you go home and you go to bed and you wake up the next day and you get the tape out and you play it and you think, wow, I did that. That's really good. And you send it off to your publisher and they put it out as a record and it sells hundreds of thousands of copies and they give you a gold disc. And he pointed to his gold discs on the wall. And he says, you can get it down anytime and play it and listen. And you think, I did that. That's development. So being a house husband, you spend all day in the apartment and you make the apartment immaculate, you clean it, you make it look good, you cook this wonderful meal. And then your family come home and they eat the food and they mess the apartment up. And the next day you've got to do it all again. And you're sitting there thinking, I did all that yesterday. It was wonderful. Where's my gold record? They don't give you a gold record. And if you work in operations, you will know that nobody gives you the gold record. You can't point to the application that you wrote yesterday and say, look, I did that yesterday. I'm entitled to a day off now. It's not like that. Those separate skills will always exist: to build it, to run it, the create and deliver it. And this is how you do it. Let me help you side of skills. They're not going away. DevOps doesn't say they're going away. DevOps is about getting the range of skills working in harness with each other to deliver it seamlessly. So you've got people in the team that can talk to you about what it will be like to run it and help you build it in a way that's runnable. You've got people who knew what they meant to do when they were building, so they can help you support it or make changes to make it easier to support. It's that synergy we're looking for. So we will always have that range of requirements across what we're calling the DevOps team to build applications or find the right ones to buy. You don't have to make them yourselves, to run and improve them, to support the users. Okay, maybe you didn't build it quite intuitively enough for the kind of users we have. Let's talk about that again, and to work with customers and business so that we know who we're doing it for and how they will think and how we can build it to work with them. And so we need to have this range of skills as working together, not as competitors, not with the applications development department seeing the operations people as enemies and vice versa. It's about breaking down that friction that's been caused by, along with if not the silos entirely, they're making the wall between them very much lower. And again, this is not an IT thing. That's Johan Cruyff, who together with a guy called Renos Michels, who was the manager at the time, created this thing called total football. And it's transformed football. It doesn't deliver the idealistic approach that Cruyff and Michels were talking about. And that's quite a good example for what we want to do as well. So if you're into football, you know all this, or if you watched the last season of Ted Lasso, you probably also know about it. But I wrote the blog about this before Ted Lasso came out. I just wanted to make that point. What makes a good team is understanding each other's needs. It's not having homogenous people, not having a group of people who are all the same. To get the team to work, they need to trust each other. You don't want a football team that everyone wants to score the goal themselves. They're willing to pass and share the glory. And what helps with that is the shared goal. Like I talked about the donkey and the team. If you measure an organization by one shared goal and we all succeed or we all fail, then that's a very powerful mechanism for making a team work. At the very least, you judge the team performance, not the performance of the individuals within that team. You need the range of skills. A good football team still has a preferred striker and the big ugly centre backs, and you put your left-footed player on the left wing and you put right-footed players on the right wing, unless you're Liverpool, which is the other way around. But yeah, there are reasons for doing it. They've thought about it and they put people in the best places. Just tell you the story about football. When I was a kid, and you're talking back in the first competitive football match I ever played in, probably was in 1962. And I played at right back for my class. And when we were attacking, my job was to stand inside our half and talk to their left winger. And his job was to talk to me. And then when they started attacking, my job was to stop him. But we were constantly screamed at by our teacher, don't chase the ball. Don't follow the ball. Stay in your position. So we attacked with 5 attackers. We defended with our 5 defenders. Football is not like that anymore. And that's because Cruyff and Nichols talked about everybody should be able to do every job. So you attack with 10 people, you defend with 10 people. Everybody can score goals. Everybody can take over someone else. So if one person moves out of position, someone else will come back and play that role. And it's a great idea if you got 11 people with the skill of Cruyff who could do anything. But in practice, you still have people who are better at some skills than others, and you want the chances to go to your striker in front of goal. But what we've got now in football is you attack with 10 people and you defend with 11. You expect your defenders to be able to score a goal. You expect your attackers to be able to do defensive headers and tackles. And it's not everybody equal, and it's not failing to recognize particular skills, but it is making us aware of each other's job so that we perform better as a team. And that is what came out of that approach to football. And it's exactly the same approach we're trying to do in DevOps. We still want really clever developers, people who write amazing code that nobody else would do. And we want really empathetic supporters who can deal with troublesome users and calm them down and get them to do what they want. They're probably not the same person, but you can make that developer aware that the support team have to do that job, and this is what they do. And if in extremis, if the phone rings when he's the only person or she's the only person in the room, they can pick it up and say, no, yeah, let me try and help you, and vice versa. So that skill. And last quote from Cruyff when he was manager at Barcelona, and someone asked if he was going to bring the best players in the world to Barcelona. He said, now, if I bring the best 11 footballers in the world here, I'll have 11 great ones. My job is to create one great 11. That's going to be different. And that's what we're trying to do in DevOps, create the team. It may be that a particular individual who's an absolute genius is not a team player, and is not going to be helpful in the DevOps environment. And that's something I'll come on to in a minute. So it's about genuine collaboration. And collaboration is often misunderstood. That's a picture of my dog, which I'm going to try and hopefully use that to illustrate how collaboration between unlike people is so much more effective. We moved here in 2020, and I went exploring the area around. Pandemic was on, but you were allowed to walk the dog, and there was nobody around for miles. We're in the middle of nowhere, the little village. So I would walk up the mountain with the dog, exploring these areas. And quite often you'd come along and there'd be this pile of those bushes, they're mostly rosemary and tangle and things. And you'd think, well, the path clearly goes through there, but I don't know where it comes out on the other side. There may be 4 places that it might come out. And I'd push through the prickly bushes trying to find the path the other side. And of course, I always got it wrong for the first 3 times, and I got scratched, and then found the right route and pushed through, the dog following me. And then I thought, this is silly. There are other skills available here. So the next time I got in that situation, I did like it says in the picture. I took a step back and said to the dog, on you go then. And she trotted forward, and she always took the right path first time, because I was looking for visual skills. That's clues, rather, because visual skills are what I focus on. That's what human beings are good at. We have very good eyesight. She following the scent trail of the wild boar that used those paths overnight. And so to me, it could have been any direction. To her, it was writ up like, you know, a neon sign. This is the way people go, or this is the way bulls and dogs should go. And I would follow her, and we went the right way every time. That's real collaboration. That's saying 1 + 1 is a much bigger result. If you work with people who are like you don't get that doubled factor because you agree with each other. You've got the same thing twice instead of 2 separate things. So that's what we want from collaboration. That's what a DevOps team does. It brings different kinds of people together and helps them work together. And that is much easier said than done. If you've tried working with people who are not like you and not losing your temper because they don't see what's obvious to you, or stopping them losing their temper because you don't see what's obvious to them, getting that collaboration is hard work, but absolutely worth it. So that's what we're trying to do with the DevOps environment, get that level of collaboration going. And one of the powerful tools we have to do that is this idea of empowering the team, trusting them, giving them trust. And that slide, and that's straight out of the course, I think that's the most important slide in the entire range of DevOps training material. It doesn't look very powerful, but it really is. If you trust people and empower teams, it gives you faster results, it gives you speed, and it reduces cost. It's not a trade-off. It's not pay more, get it faster. It goes faster and it's cheaper. And if you don't trust people, it both costs more and slows down. And that is absolutely critical to what we're trying to do here. Because if you trust them, they know what they're doing, they do it. They do it quickly because they don't have to write business cases or go and ask the boss or put up cases for it. And therefore it's done quickly, and because they don't have to experiment and do all this extra work or involve extra people, then it's done cheaper. If you don't trust them, they have to spend their time justifying what they want to do. They have to involve managers and other people and accountants to come up with it. So it goes much slower and it costs more. And that's the single most important thing we're trying to deliver here. This allows you to be faster and cheaper. So it's not a trade-off. It's everyday life, obviously, what we do. But it's about driving through trust. And I'm going to come back to little and often in a minute. But before that, one of the techniques that we know, and you know, to make empowerment work is the thing that I call constraint space. You won't find that in the books, unfortunately. I've been preaching this idea for a while. It's about setting boundaries and giving people freedom within it. And you all grew up with constraint space. All of us will remember sometime in their youth, their parents saying to them something like, well, you can go and play outside and you can play in our garden and next door's garden and the field behind the house. And you can play with Johnny and Susan next door, but you're not to cross the road and you're not to play with Quentin down the road because we don't like his mother. And you knew you could go outside and you knew you had to be back for lunch for 12:30 or whatever. But you could go outside in the garden and play with Johnny and Susan next door. And you didn't have to come in and say, can we play football? Can we play hide and seek? Can we play climbing the trees? Because you knew that within the constraints space you've been given, within those boundaries, you could do whatever you wanted. Obviously, there are other constraint spaces about not doing anything too dangerous or not killing the cat or those kind of things. But we grew up with those constraint spaces. And we grew up very much aware that those constraint spaces changed. Because when I was 6 and 7 years old, that was the kind of constraint space I had. You can play in our garden and you mustn't cross the road. By the time I got to be 17, the constraint space was, if you're going to go out drinking, you have to eat something first. And if you're going to be late, make sure you've got your key with you, because I'm not staying up for you and I'm not leaving the door unlocked. Okay, so there was a gradual change. And that's what we do in the work environment. We set those boundaries. We say, you can spend this much money on this area. You can change anything in that set of code, but you can't do anything that would affect other people's without asking. You can do things between midnight and 4 in the morning, because you've got time to get it back again, that you can't do during the day. We're used to those constraint spaces, and that's the real power of empowerment. Not just setting those boundaries, but maintaining them and making sure everybody understands them. You can call it governance. And one of the key things governance does is set and maintain those constraint-based boundaries. And as I say, we all learned that. It made our childhood easier and it makes parenting easier, but it does require a bit of nerve on both sides. And that's the best picture. I'm sorry the picture is black and white. I took it a very long time ago. And it's maybe interesting to think that those girls now will be in their 60s. And I wonder whether that, sheer courage and ability to find enjoyment in all sorts of things has actually paid off in the rest of their life. But that was in a slum in Glasgow sometime in the 1970s. But it makes the point I'm trying to make here. And the big point underpinning all this is the things we're talking about in Devops are things you know from your everyday life. Talked about little and often. And this is an agile concept. You'll talk about in progress iteratively with feedback. Yeah, sounds fancy. Little and often. And if you do a little bit very often, then the little bit is not big enough to cause any damage if it goes wrong, and you can get it out quickly. And I've had to be careful with my capitalization here. All my bullet points start with a capital letter, except that first one, because this is agile, not agile, not the mechanism, the approach, the formal thing. This is about being agile. And we're used to this thing. And it's what I call seeing life actually as a grandparent or parent perspective. If you've got children and you put your children to bed at night and you get them up the next morning, they'll look just the same as they did when you put them to bed the night before. They don't change overnight. If you are a grandparent, typically, and I find I'm doing it now, swore I never would, but you do, you don't see your grandchildren very often, in my case. So you go and see them. Been 2 or 3 months since you saw them, and the first words that come out of your mouth, whether you mean them to or not, are, wow, you've grown, haven't you? Aren't you a big girl now? We see the changes because they're like that red line there. It's how traditional IT is released. We trundle along without changing, and suddenly there's a big step upwards and anything different, and then we trundle along. If we're going to do little and often, it almost looks like a straight line. And the advantage is those blue triangles there. Because if you think that the area under the line is that the value you're delivering, actually, if you give a little thing very often, you give things faster, and you got advantages faster, and you give more value by releasing things, small units, very often. And that's one of the approaches and the benefits that come out of doing this little and often thing that the Devops will push forward. And it gives you what I call the drink fresh milk approach, based on a joke from Irish comedian years ago. He went to get a drink of milk from the fridge, and he gets a bottle of milk out of the fridge, and his wife says, no, not that one. We aren't using that one yet. That just came this morning. We've got milk from 2 or 3 days ago that we need to drink first. And he said, it's ridiculous. We get fresh milk delivered to our door every day, but we can't drink it. We can't appreciate how nice the fresh milk tastes. We have to keep it for 2 days and then drink the milk that was fresh 3 days ago. We've done that in IT a lot. We get people to submit changes, and we consider them, and we talk about them, and then we schedule them and program them and build them and test them and implement them 6 months after they've asked for them. And probably they don't want that now, or requirements have changed, or it's not working as well as it would have done if we'd done it back then. Doing big things over a long period of time means by the time we get it, it's stale. If we deliver little and often, we're always getting the changes that are relevant to us, small ones. And we're used to that on our mobiles, our smartphones. Your smartphone will probably have at least one app that's updated every night. We don't notice it. We don't notice the changes to that app. We get messages sometimes saying, yeah, we've changed this, because you don't bother to look. It's intuitive. They're just tinkering with little parts of it, and we're used to that. That's the philosophy we think we need more generically across IT.